Welcome to Total War Profield. This series will look at many factions across many different titles and examine the historical accuracy behind the family members, the units, and many small details or Easter eggs. What is fact and what is fiction? And as for what is fiction, where did the developers find the inspiration behind it? Today's episode focuses on England in Medieval 2 Total War, and there's quite a lot of history here in the game. To be clear, I will not look at England from the Kingdoms expansion, only the base game, Vanilla England. Kingdoms expansion England may get its own video someday in the future. If this does well, that is. Firstly, the map is inaccurate. Medieval 2 Total War starts in 1080 AD. Now, I'm going to show you 3 different maps from different mappers on YouTube. Emperor Tiger Star, Olibai, and Kulteru. All will be linked down below, of course, with the videos where I found this. There's disagreements between the mappers around Normandy, but the rest is very familiar. In Medieval 2, the English own Normandy, London and Nottingham. However, York is as a rebel settlement. 2 things I want to say here. 1. York or Northern England was often a problem with rebellions, uprisings, so that may be why that settlement in particular was chosen as the one to start as a rebel. And second, England, for most players, will be the faction that you play first. It's first on the list, it's an easy start location on an island, it's just natural that people will play England as the first Medieval 2 game. And York acts as the perfect baby's first settlement sort of thing, like what they did with the Julii and Segesta or Warhammer factions, where there is always one clear thing to do at the start. All these maps also show England to have the southeast of Scotland, which is certainly not in the game. Historically, medieval England was well known for their archers or longbowmen, and this is certainly represented heavily in their unit roster. Firstly, they have, I think, 3 different longbowman units, and the Sherwood archers, which have the highest missile attack in the game, excluding siege equipment, of course. Sherwood is a reference to Robin Hood, as Sherwood Forest was the home of his base. Whether it's story, true or false, that's what it's based off. Now we get into the most interesting bit, the family members. Now, there may be many mistakes here, as sources can be wrong or outdated, and I often see sources disagree with one another. I have gone with my gut feeling on most of this, but at least the sources here are more consistent than they were for the last episode, which was Julii in Rome 1. Firstly, we have King William the Conqueror as the faction leader. Of course, the guy who fought Battle of Hastings in 1066, conquered parts of Britain, ordered for the Doomsday Book. I said ordered, it's like I got it off Amazon or something. and all of that stuff. Interesting to note, in the game, William has a trait, religiously minded, which was something writers at the time were known to praise him for. That being said, writers at the time criticised him for his cruelty. In game, he has traits such as cruel and cunning, and cruel leader, increasing his dread within the game itself. I could go on all day about this guy, but this guy is common knowledge, so I'm just going to move on. His eldest son in the game is Rufus, faction heir at 26. Second eldest in the game is Robert, 24. However, his eldest was actually Robert, and he was 29 during 1080. And Rufus, although heir, was younger at 24. Oddly, they got these guys mixed up in the game with their ages, just slightly off as well, which I found quite interesting. Robert was known as Robert Kerr. In-game he begins in Cannes. Historically, he was invading Scotland, roughly at the time this game begins. Fun story, Rufus and Henry was the youngest son, and I will get more into him later, pulled a prank on Robert, where they poured a chamber pot over his head, which is basically a barrel that they use as a toilet in the bedroom at the time. I won't go on for hours with details, but basically Rufus got angry, and it resulted in him getting exiled, because he he reacted in a way he probably shouldn't have done. He was reunited with his father due to the efforts of Matilda, William the Conqueror's wife, and Robert's mother. Matilda, who is accurate in game, would die 3 years after the start date of Medieval 2. Robert would go on to inherit the Duchy of Normandy, which is why I believe he begins the game in Cannes, and not Nottingham, and would later partake in the First Crusade. His younger brother, yet heir to the throne of England, Rufus, also known as William II, would go on to be king, but then would die in a hunting accident. Oddly, he died in the same forest and in a very similar way to another brother called Richard. This brother would not be in the game as he died before the start date. So, who inherited England? Well, it was the younger brother mentioned earlier, Henry. Henry starts the game at 12 years old, which was his accurate age at the time. In the year 1100, so at the age of 32, he would inherit the throne and rule for another 35 years. In history, he will be the first King of England of the Henry line, Henry I. All ancients are fiction except for the Princess Cecilia, or Cecily, who in real history would become a nun in Cannes. The game only shows William to have one daughter. Some sources say that he actually had 4, but most can definitely agree that he had at least 2. Yeah, this is an evidence of some historical debate. Some say 2, some say 4, but they all say that there's 2 that we can confirm the existence of. There's only one daughter in the game for, of course, gameplay reasons, as each character in the game can have a maximum of 4 children. And that's everything. What I love about making these videos is that we get to see why the game is how it is. It's not all balancing, it's not all about making it fun. There is a lot of hidden history built into these games that you have to research to uncover. I hope you are enjoying this series as much as I am. Please subscribe for more. It may be Rome Total War Seleucid Empire next, which I think could be interesting. The largest remnant of Alexander's empire. If you know anyone who is interested in this stuff, then please share with a friend or in a Discord, as that does help me grow and makes more of these possible. As for now, these will be every single Saturday. Hope to see you there, hope you enjoyed, and goodbye.